They said the city was dying long before anyone admitted it. You heard it first in the bells. At odd hours, too early, too late they rang, slow and uneven, as if even the sound was tired. Each toll meant someone hadn't made it through the night. You stopped counting after the 10th day in a row. People told each other it was nothing. A seasonal sickness. Bad air. Temporary. You nodded when they said it, because nodding was easier than arguing, and arguing felt dangerous. Truth, in times like these, always did. You worked in the archive, the tall stone tower most citizens avoided. Too gloomy, they said. Too full of old mistakes. But mistakes were your job. You were a copyist, one of the quiet ones preserving records, so old they had outlived everyone who wrote them. History spoke to you in whispers. You copied accounts of plagues renamed to protect reputations, of leaders who smiled while cities rotted, of healers who were ignored because their words were uncomfortable. Again and again, you saw the same ending written in different ink. People didn't die because they didn't know the cure. They died because they refused the truth. One night, your candle burned low as you copied a brittle manuscript from 2 centuries earlier. Your eyes snagged on a line that made your hand freeze mid-stroke. The illness spread not because it was unstoppable, but because it was unnamed. You read it again. Your pulse quickened. The record described a city just like yours, leaders minimizing, citizens clinging to reassurance, truth delayed until it arrived too late. When honesty finally surfaced, deaths slowed, not stopped, slowed. You leaned back, heart pounding, as bells rang outside the tower. The next morning, the Chancellor stood in the square, robes immaculate, voice calm. The illness is retreating, he announced. There is no cause for fear. Continue as normal. You stood among the crowd and felt something inside you crack. You had seen this moment before, not lived it, but remembered it through the dead. History was repeating itself, and this time, you were alive inside the loop. That night, fear sat beside you like a second shadow. You knew what truth cost. You had copied the trials, the executions, the footnotes that said later proven correct beneath names of people long buried. Still, you made your choice. You began to write not for preservation, but for survival. You copied passages that mattered, symptoms, patterns, warnings. You slipped pages under doors, left them in markets, hid them between prayer books and loaves of bread. This spreads before it shows. Isolation saves lives. Comforting lies are still lies. Some people tore the pages apart. Some cursed your name without knowing it. Others read them by lamplight, trembling, and quietly changed what they did the next day. A week later, guards came for you. They dragged you from the archive and into marble halls where truth echoed too loudly to be welcome. The Chancellor's eyes were cold. You are spreading panic, he said. You swallowed. I'm spreading memory. He leaned closer. Do you know what happens to people who insist on truth at the wrong time? You thought of all the names you had copied, all the ink that survived when bodies didn't. Yes, you said, they die, and sometimes because of them others live. They sentenced you to death at dawn. That night, the city was quieter than it had been in weeks. Too many houses were dark, but something else moved through the silence. People stayed home. They separated the sick. They stopped listening to speeches and started listening to facts. For the first time in days, the bells did not ring. At sunrise, you stood on the scaffold, heart steady in a way that surprised you. If this was the cost, you had already paid it. Then shouting. A physician pushing through the crowd. Numbers. Proof. Fewer dead. Fewer sick. Truth had arrived ahead of the blade. They spared you not out of gratitude, but necessity. Later, the official records would claim the leaders had always believed in transparency. You would make sure history corrected that. The illness did not vanish overnight. Truth is not a miracle, it is a direction. But the dying slowed. The city lived. Years later, when children visited the archive, you watched them run their fingers along the shelves. Why did people hide the truth? One asked you. You smiled, tired and real. Because lies feel safer. Until they aren't. You touched the spine of an old record, the kind that once warned you. Truth doesn't promise you won't die, you told them. It promises you won't die because someone was afraid to speak. And the city saved not by hope, not by power, but by honesty, remembered your name, even when it tried not to.